The 6th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now. This is Carolina basketball.
Black holding high, goes to Daugherty. Daugherty in the double team, gives it back to Black with 20 seconds left to play. Goes back to Michael Jordan, jumper from out on the left, good! Michigan out of timeout. And Weber, front court, Carolina thought he'd travel with it. Weber, front court, Carolina with foul. He takes a timeout, they're out of timeout. Technical foul on Michigan.
Now gets it away to Donald Williams. Down the side to Stackhouse. Stackhouse streaking in on Park. Reverse dunk is good, and he gets fouled by Park. Oh, my goodness, what a dunk. Brown gets it into Williams. Here comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out to him. Long outside shot. Short rebounded. Made. It's over. Carolina has won the national championship. Belton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. 89-72. And how about them Tar Heels? They are the national champions.
Matthews off the mark. And this year the confetti is going to fall for North Carolina. They're not going to be denied this time.
From HeelToughBlog.com, this is the Four Corners podcast, featuring your host, Josh Marlowe. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. It's been a while since we last talked to you about Carolina basketball because, frankly, there hasn't been a lot of news to talk about in terms of having an individual podcast dedicated to that, but we've got a little bit of info to bring to you guys today. We got a great show planned for you. Before we get started, though, we are recording on the day of Roy Williams Day at the Wells Fargo Championship in Charlotte, North Carolina. The Wells Fargo Championship honoring the now retired head coach of the Tar Heels, making Wednesday Roy Williams Day. He played a pro-am with head football coach Mac Brown. Joining Roy Williams was Will Zalatoris. If anyone is a golf fan or just even a casual watcher of golf, Will Zalatoris made a really nice run at the 2021 Masters. Was also compared to Happy Gilmore's caddy from the movie Happy Gilmore.
There's no compare. That's the kid. Now, there's no way that's not the kid.
Well, I mean, yeah.
I mean, come on.
Forever, that guy will be known as Happy Gilmore's caddy for the rest of his life, no matter if he wins a major or two. And Gary Woodland was playing alongside the head football coach of the Tar Heels, and Roy had an average day on the golf course. Wasn't like his last round at Augusta National before he retired. Shot an 84 or 85, which is roughly 13 or 14 over par at the Wells Fargo Championship, but parred 4 of his last 6 holes and had some great quotes on the golf course, but just really neat that Wells Fargo Championship did honor him. He loves the game of golf. That's one of the things that he's been doing since he's retired. I've seen many pictures of him. I know he was in Arizona a weekend or 2 weekends ago out there playing golf, so he won't be he's still going to be around the golf course and around athletics because, man, the man still loves to compete. But we didn't get a chance to get out there to watch him tee it up. But I think this will become a staple of things in the state of North Carolina, especially with the first year of his retirement, finding a way to honor him for what he's done as the basketball coach at Carolina because he's one of the most public figures in this state's history, whether it's athletics or politics or whatever. Everyone has an idea of who Roy Williams is, but now we can get into some more of the big stuff that we got to talk about today, and that's the biggest piece of news Carolina's gotten since they named Hubert Davis the head coach of the Tar Heels back early in April, and that's that Armando Bacot is coming back for the next season. Hubert Davis pretty much said that on an interview with John Rothstein's podcast, pretty much confirming that Armando Bacot not only is coming back to Carolina, he is going to go ahead and withdraw from his process of going through the NBA draft to solidify this decision. I thought that was kind of interesting because I would still think, well, maybe, hey, Mondo, you go through the process, you work out for some teams, you do some interviews, but I think Armando knows that pretty much he knows what he's got to do to work on his game, and we can dive on that here in just a second. And he's coming back for Carolina, and we all know that's really big. He led this team in scoring. He led this team in rebounding this past season. There's not that the same amount of depth in the front court as there was a year ago because Walker Kessler, Sterling Manley, and Walker Miller, and Garrison Brooks, they all transferred out of the program. Day'Ron Sharpe is off to the NBA. So there's going to be a lot of the offense now running through Armando Bacot, where last year, even though he led the team in scoring, you would run the offense at times through Garrison Brooks. Day'Ron Sharpe at times you could run offense through. The end of the season, especially after that Florida State game, Walker Miller was a guy that could demand the basketball because he was 7'1" and had a mismatch inside.
Walker Kessler.
Yeah, Walker Kessler can do that.
I was about to say.
And Walker Miller could do some things. He just never got the chance to. But all those guys are gone.
He did on senior night, though.
And so now, now minutes are opened up. Now the floor is going to open up for Armando Bacot. We're hoping with some of the moves that Hubert Davis has made to this roster. On another note, with him coming back, Carolina also returns their top 2 scorers from last season. That's the first time they've done so since the 2015-16 season when they returned Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson. That team, of course, made the national title game before losing in heartbreaking fashion to Villanova. Not saying this team...
You could have just stopped and made the national championship.
Not saying this team's going to make the national championship. Not saying this team's making the Final Four.
You just set those expectations.
But I think when you look at the program and the amount of turnover that this program has gone through, for 4 years it's been the point guards because this is the first time you're returning a point guard in the last 4 seasons. But this is now the first time in 5 seasons that you've returned your top 2 scorers. And we know, and it's not going to change under Hubert Davis, experience matters at Carolina in the way that they want to play. And now you're bringing back your top 2 guys. You feel like your guard play is going to be much more improved because they're much more experienced. And a full season of, Caleb Love, R.J. Davis, Kerwin Walton playing heavy minutes in the ACC, Anthony Harris coming back from injury. They're all going to be much more experienced and it's going to benefit. But you're bringing back Armando Bacot, and that's a really big thing for this team because you at least know that you have one guy that you've seen produce for you. Brady Manick has produced, but that's been at Oklahoma. This team hasn't seen Brady Manick play up close. They don't know what they don't know what they're getting in Brady Manick per se, but they know what they're getting in Armando Bacot.
Well, there's going to be a natural adjustment period for Brady Manick. I mean, let's just be honest here. If you don't think that is going to be a part of him coming to Carolina, you just don't know transfers. Even when we saw Cam Johnson when he first came to Carolina, there was an adjustment period. Most people forget about that because
he was that good as a senior.
Well, the other thing was as a junior, remember, he was still coming back from a leg injury. He wasn't on the floor as much. So that season, I feel like gets forgotten about a little bit because he had that second year. So there's going to be time, a little bit of time here for Brady Manick to adjust. Now, there'll be some elements that Brady Manick brings that some of the other guys on your roster weren't going to bring. But yeah, don't get me wrong. This is one of the biggest gets to come back. Honestly, probably outside of Caleb Love, this is the biggest one because you needed that stability at point guard. But with all the guys that left, as you mentioned, this is huge to have a guy in the middle of your offense that's going to be able to go to work. He did it at times last year. I think that's going to be one of the big things that they've got to work on with him outside of developing a little bit of a game away from the basket. I think that's still an area where if he does want to be an NBA player, they're going to have to develop that, and they also probably want that in their offense as well. You have Manick who can step out and knock some shots down, but, look, you're not expecting Armando to become an outside shooter by any stretch, but you would like to see him at least be able to step away from the basket, hit some mid-range jump shots consistently.
Hubert Davis disclosed on an interview with Andy Katz every guy on their roster, as a part of their summer workout program, they have to make 1,000 threes a week.
Oof, that's
so stepping out and hitting the 3-point shot, it may not be a part of Armando Bacot's game, but it's want to be preferred.
Tell me he ain't going to be getting guarded during these shots.
in his bag. You know,
dude, can you imagine if Desmond Hubert was here when he with this rule in place? That'd be a long week for old Desmond.
That dude bricked free throws. We can only imagine the amount of 3-point shots.
He shot. What was it? He shot like 25% from the free throw line at one time. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, this is not a slight to Desmond Hubert. That was just the first name that popped into my head. He brought some great stuff on the defensive end of the floor. But I did want to say this, with getting Armando back, is, you do have to work on him being a more consistent threat for you. He's with him being pretty much the main guy, and at this point, probably the lone big that you've got down there that's going to be a known quantity. You've got to have him consistently producing. It's got to be there night in and night out. There can't be these stretches of 2 or 3 games where he just disappears.
Well, I think a lot of that. I think and a lot of the reason why I think he didn't have nights where he produced, if you go back and you break down the film, he just didn't get the ball. And it wasn't the fact that he didn't get, he did a really good job last year, I thought, getting position and sealing off his defenders. But when you don't get the ball, well, you can't score without the ball. And I'm not trying to be a smart butt. That's just, you can't do it. But I also think this, and I put this in the article about what he needs to work on in the summer to get better as getting in terms of wanting to go to the NBA, but also helping this team. He took a step forward last year, I thought, in getting his body better. But I still think he could be in much better shape. I still think he could run the floor better. I still think he could be a guy that's not going to be tired after playing 28 to 32 minutes. That happened last year, which it shouldn't have because you had a quartet of bigs that you were getting rotated with. So I think that's another thing is that his conditioning level has to increase because, as you mentioned, he's the unless you bring in a guy on the recruiting trail or you add another transfer, there aren't going to be the minutes that you see Brady Manick at the 5. You are holding on for dear life, and that's you playing matchup basketball.
Dude,
you're playing smaller to make the defense adjust to you. That's not what you want to be. Like him, foul trouble for him. That's worst case scenario for this team as of right now.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. I don't think people realize at this point, even with him coming back, and there's reason to feel encouraged about what this team can possibly do because he's coming back. And you would imagine that, look, he's going to be in better shape this year. Everybody is going to be conditioned better this year. With COVID-19 protocols in place, you weren't able to get your guys as conditioned as you probably
I was in the best shape of my life.
And that's in every sport. Just look at the NBA, MLB. Dude, you got guys going down every other day with season-ending injuries. So I think that he will be better conditioned. But, yeah, people have to still realize that as of right now, you've got Armando Bacot, Brady Manick, and your next biggest player on the roster is still Leaky Black. That's your third tallest player. Him and Dontrez Styles are going to be 6'7". That's your roster. So I'm telling you, like you said, foul trouble is going to be important, but that's why it's so important for him to be able to be a consistent threat down there. And I think you're right. I think part of that was because of the rotation of guys that they had. The other part of it is that, look, he's coming back. He's your leading scorer. He was your leading scorer for a reason. The guards, even though you're going to be better, even though you're going to be another year older, you're going to be more experienced, you need to put the ball inside at times and let Armando Bacot go to work. If he's playing well, give him the ball. Don't feel like you have to make everything happen from the outside because look, there are going to be games this upcoming season where you are going to have to do that. In games where Armando Bacot's playing well, take some pressure off yourself. Put that ball inside and let him go to work. And it'll be interesting to see because he's going to be, look, not only is he going to be the leader of the front court, he's going to be one of the leaders of this team. So that's another area where you want to see him maybe get a little more vocal because mean, let's be honest. The guys that were supposed to be the senior leaders last year, I mean, they weren't awful, but they were quiet. You need him to be a more vocal presence on the court, and we'll see if Hubert Davis is able to bring that out of him in the offseason.
I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying. Carolina's going to be a more guard-driven team. And I think that's the way the game's going, and I think under Hubert Davis they will adapt to that style of play much better. But look at teams that are considered guard-oriented